Hello, and welcome to our session today on B2B tech marketing best practices. We're going to talk today about planning for your 2021 marketing efforts, or like we are enjoying saying right now, planning in the time of crazy and/or living without major events. My name is David English. I've got Jeffrey Marchesiani here on the line. I'm the president of TSL Marketing, and Jeffrey's our SVP of Operations. Um, as we're getting into our 2021 marketing planning, it's quite a challenge, and unlike one that we've experienced really in our lifetimes. We've had a year of really trying to adjust and deal with things on the fly, and now we're starting to really make longer term plans in a time of great uncertainty. And the best thing I can say, Jeffrey, is it's really hard to know exactly what's going to come next, and therefore we have to plan on a lot of uncertainty on a lot of levels, and that can include uncertainty around how different industries will do, what level of resumption of sort of 2019 way of living occurs, and and then how do we market to people in the midst of all that? How do we interact? And so I think the biggest thing is to say, hey, look, we need to make our plans to understand that uncertainty will continue for some time to go. And I don't know your thoughts on that, Jeffrey, and how you're looking at kind of some of the planning efforts right now.
Yeah, as we talk to the customers, I think there's two main components to consider and probably a third in the middle. So, number one is how the audience is. To your point, what's the comfort? What's the mind space of the audience that you're sending these messages out to or starting to plan events with? So that's one major factor that we really didn't have in 2019. Not that we wouldn't consider the customer's mindset or the buyer's journey, but with all the variables today, it's something to consider. Then internally, you have to consider your team because since there is so much uncertainty about tomorrow, you really have to rethink almost at a cultural level, how is your team going to be able to react? How innovative are they now? Like, what ideas are they coming up with today for potential outcomes tomorrow that may or may not happen? So it's almost contingency planning for the unknown. I was having a conversation actually with the internal TSL team, my leadership team yesterday, and I said something similar. I was like, I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. Nobody does. I don't know what we have to be ready for, but we have to be ready for it. And again, with a big smile, I ended that. And so the team sort of looked at me and laughed and nodded their head. But that's really the mindset. Like we say it, we used to talk about being nimble. Like this is beyond being nimble. It's almost anticipating the unknown, but more importantly, being ready to react. So I'll say those are the two. And then your message is sort of in the middle of that. Like, what are you saying to the world and over what channels? So I guess if you put those three things together, it should best prepare you for sort of the chaos that we're living through. And again, I don't think this is going to end quickly. I think it'll just sort of wind down over time, best case scenario. So I think it's something that you have to consider.
Yeah, and the I guess for marketers, the good news is that there's a tremendous amount of opportunity that exists, and will always exist whenever there is chaos or uncertainty. And so, as you think of your customers and your customer segments, they're going to be going through their planning and their business planning, knowing there's a lot of uncertainty as well. And so the question is, how does your technology help them, or how do your services help them in these kind of future times? And so if you can really craft your message to say, hey, look, we know that as you get into 2021, things will be challenging and ever changing, and here's how we can help you with that, either through our services or through our technologies, and really make that into part of your value proposition. That your value proposition should help, and that could be helping to deal with uncertainty. So helping companies be more nimble, helping them with things like cost savings, which will continue to be very important, helping them attack new revenue opportunities. So really to make sure your value prop is adjusted to take advantage of that uncertainty. Um, the next part, and this is probably a bigger bit of controversy, and Jeffrey and I kind of had a bit of debate on our own on this prior to it. The large scale events that many companies relied on, we certainly don't anticipate that they're going to return in 2021 with anywhere near the pre-COVID participation numbers. So if you had an event last year in 2019 that had 20,000 people, in 2021, we don't anticipate that event is going to have 20,000 people. It may be in person and virtual, and it may have 5,000 people, but it won't have 20,000. At least we certainly don't anticipate it. And a lot of like the small local events that many companies tended to rely on, the steak dinners and golf outings and ball games, may be able to resume to some level, but probably will not have that same level of participation. And a challenge it presents is that you can't digitize the human experience. The relationship building that goes on with these events, and certainly the sales cycles that either start or continue.
Yeah, and I keep seeing this, and especially with the large events, and we've participated in a few ourselves. We'll go unnamed, but the idea and this sort of digitizing human experience and that not working, like the idea of walking around a convention floor or bumping into people at the bar at the convention, all the sort of the touch points that we all rely on both sides. Customers, finding solution providers, and then solution providers finding customers. We haven't seen it work. And again, if you just think of how us human animals work, I don't think it ever will. But I think there is opportunity here to do some smaller events where you can socially distance folks and still make it interesting. So one of our customers has done some really cool things around that. So they haven't given up on it, but they are being very safe so that people that are willing to take on the risk and know that some won't, even if you make it extremely safe and there's plexiglass and hand sanitizer everywhere, you're still going to have people that just don't want to do it. They don't feel safe. They don't want to get in a plane if they had to. So I think more regionalized events will gain a lot more traction than, hey, fly to a city, even if it's a 45 or an hour long flight. The whole fly to a city and have an event, I think it's going to be much more about, hey, the people in this city, the people in this city. So if you used to have one event where you had whatever, the East Coast come to it, now you may have to do 10 different sort of micro events along the same theme in more regionalized things where people can drive their own cars versus going through an airport, sitting in an airplane, another airport, just where they have exposure points.
Yeah, and we're certainly seeing fatigue with webinars. We can continue them, and they should still be part of your mix. But just know that that there's a lot of webinar competition out there, and there is some fatigue. I think the creative small person. I think there's a place for those, Jeffrey, as you're saying. Like, and this may be, hey, when the weather's nice, we're going to have an outdoor event, or we're going to do something that's relatively small. So I think there can be a place for those small in-person local events, but I'd be very careful to rely on those too much as part of your plans, just given the uncertainty that you don't know what might happen, and it's hard to plan those well if it's anything other than something small out in advance. Um, this has been true for a while, but I think it's even more true. It's more true now, and it's going to be more true in 2021. That if your website can't be found, or sorry to be a little aggressive with the terminology, stinks there. If your website stinks or can't be found, you're at a major disadvantage. People continue to find companies they do business with through searching, and through whether it's through organic search or paid search. And your website itself, I often talk to companies, they're like, yeah, we haven't updated our website in a few years. Our messaging is out of date. It's like, well, okay, then you've got a double problem. If people actually find your site, your messaging is out of date and doesn't reflect your current value proposition. So the importance of having a well-performing site, both that can be found and get people through to so that they inquire or engage with your content is more important now than ever before.
And the key here for me to put in some basic terms is we're don't look at the website as, again, digitizing human experience, but this should humanize your brand. And now more than ever, that's really going to pay dividends if you can humanize your brand. So if you do have a good, strong narrative and sort of story arc to your brand, how your service offerings fit into that story arc, how your customers fit into that story arc, so that people can understand. Because now more than ever, since they can't go to events as much, they are leaning more on the internet to gain information, to get educated, to learn what's happening. So content that is more educational, that is more valuable to your users, is stronger now than ever. And this is where, as a foundation, your content, and then if you optimize it for SEO, if you leverage it properly for PPC, and you know your audiences, like now more than ever, I've been having this conversation a lot more these last few weeks. Now more than ever, your personas, those of you that don't have them, that have like, we know who our buyers are, but don't have like the documented persona that really gets deep into sort of the psyche and the tendencies of your audience, you're going to find right now that those that have them are going to outperform you at certain metrics because they're going to viscerally be able to connect with that person again digitally, not replacing the human experience, but they're going to be able to create content that speaks to them better, that adds more value to them now more than ever. So it's a really critical time that you do have your personas, that you do have a very solid content strategy that does speak to your personas, and then everything comes from there. The website copy, your PPC, your SEO, everything really comes from there. So the fundamentals pay off more than ever right now.
Yeah, it's a really good point. And if any of you, as you're listening, didn't catch it, rewind for a couple of minutes and just listen to what Jeffrey said right again right there. The content, I think that the importance of the content, certainly, I was sort of thinking of it in the context of getting found, but also when you're looking at your organic social efforts, which we talk a little bit less here, but your organic social efforts, your nurture streams, your calls to action, your offers, all of those rely on content, and and that becomes extremely. It was important before; it's more important now because of the really the lack of events. And so, thinking of that through and how do you build your content out for your persona specifically and things that they find highly valuable. As time goes by, content will become harder to become more and more unique as other companies put content out there. So it's not just putting generic, repetitive content. It's putting out something that's highly valuable, and that's important for your website and for your other efforts. The sales team, and this goes back to what we were saying before about you can't digitize the human experience. A lot of the salespeople we work with are challenged in that they really relied on in-person meetings, in-person events to build relationships with their prospects and customers. And at the very least, those will be more limited and not quite as easy in 2021 as they were in 2019. So we need to think of how do we help the sales team in their relationship building. And there are a couple of easy. There's one easy way I think to do it, and then there are areas that become more challenging. But one of them is to help in either the website or social with things like photos of the sales team, fun facts, just things to humanize them, to allow your prospects to kind of get to know the salespeople and your customer-facing people, not just salespeople, but your customer-facing people in more detail. You can have a blog post introducing your sales team or your customer facing team, and then really working as part of your efforts on these sort of semi personalized templates and sequences. You should be using a good marketing automation software. We use HubSpot a lot, but there are others as well that allow you to create these kind of templates that salespeople can customize. So you have sort of a base of an email or a series of emails that the salesperson can add more personal detail. And that can be a very good way for them to kind of efficiently reach out to people, but in a way that's personalized. I think that the kind of the generic emails, and I don't know, Jeffrey, if you agree, but these sort of, large scale generic emails or generic content just really is not going to perform as well as something that has a level of personalization to it.
Yeah, and value. David, on a series that we've been doing for some of our customers, like if you get that generic email that doesn't speak to you, again, it doesn't offer you value. It's value to them. I want to sell to you, so I'm going to keep checking in to see if you want to buy from me. That's value
Right.
to the
Yep.
salesperson. It has no value to, and again, and David or you or your customer. So just think of that. It just gets back to content.
It
Like I
does. Yeah.
said, like if there's ever a time when we'll look back in marketing and be like, whoa, that was the year where all the people that said unique content was important and know your audience, know your personas, like the stuff that a lot of us, and again, I'm guilty of myself. I'm not saying I'm on a higher plane. Like we didn't pay attention to these things. This year will show us that we should have been, and from now on, we're going to have to.
Right. Well, and that it is it's another very good point, Jeffrey. You're batting 1,000 today. It was a really good one there because I think when we're looking at that personalizing the relationship building, the salesperson who says like to the prospect, "Are you buying yet?" And that's their outreach, isn't building a relationship. People don't want to hear a little bit more. In fact, as you said it, it reminded me I was working with one of my colleagues who wanted to follow up this week with a prospect who hadn't replied to several notes. And I'm like, hey, like, I know this is what she's interested in. Send her this bit of content and just say, hey, we're here when you need us. And the "Are you buying yet?" emails did got no reply, but the "Here's something I'm doing to be helpful. Let me know if I can help" actually got a reply with what we were hoping to find out from the original emails. And I think it also helped build a bit of the relationship because it was being helpful. So to your point, Jeffrey, that does go back to content. Um, there are, I will say, the fundamentals of marketing, and we see a lot of this in marketing. I probably could just put this one on repeat because every so often there's a new buzzword or a new technology or something new that comes out in marketing, and often people think that marketing has changed sort of dramatically, but the fundamentals really will remain very constant. The delivery vehicles and what that is, and maybe the emphasis of certain things won't. But good targeting, good persona development, good content, how we deliver the message. So how do we get our message to people, getting found by those searching, and then keeping really ongoing and sustained efforts. I think as you're looking at your planning, the biggest thing to avoid is sort of random acts of marketing. So, hey, I'm going to suddenly run a tactic at a new segment with no intention of continuing that effort over a longer period of time, or I'll run to one segment, then I'll run to another. You can do that only if you're really, if you want to test, do sort of an early test of how your audience is receptive to your message. Outside of that, you really want to understand your segments and continue to market to them over a period of time. Jeffrey, I don't know on the fundamentals if there are any kind of key ones that you look at.
I think that's it. And we've been hitting on them. The true core, the sort of the core of the earth, if I may, is your content. You have to have and know who you're writing for. But then everything else, at the end of the day, I've distilled down what we can do as marketers is to get people to attract people to our website, to our brand, offline and online, by the way, and then have them have an experience and sort of go through the brand story. And that is visiting the website, this, and ultimately that could be a card in a fishbowl at the legacy event. That could be filling out a form at one of your new events. That could be filling out a form on your website. So really the core is attracting folks to your story and then having them read through your story and then convert, which is the most important thing. So again, it's the blocking and tackling stuff. And I appreciate what Dave said. Like I see with a fair amount of younger marketers, just because they haven't built the experience, sort of the business hardened experience, that they will know the tools very well. They'll know analytics. They'll know the platforms like a HubSpot or Pardot, Eloqua, and it just reinforces the tools are only the tools. And I had this conversation at a separate level with the customer this week, where if you have bad process, if you have bad content, go out and get a tool, all you're going to do is automate and amplify your bad process and bad content. So it really comes back to having sort of the fundamentals of, do we know our audience? Do we know what they care about? Do we know where they consume? Do we know what they want to consume? Do we have something valuable to say? And we've said this now, if you don't have something valuable to say, don't say anything. Like really, don't just put something out there to put something out there. Speak to them. So it really does come down to the fundamentals, and no tool is going to repair the stuff that you see here. No tool is going to repair. If you get all this down and then you buy the tool and you automate this at speed and give better experiences through automation and machine learning, AI, some of the newer stuff, then you're going to really leave your competition behind. But know that you're not going to leave your competition behind by just buying a tool and then having bad message and bad processes.
Yeah, absolutely. And part of it is being honest with your evaluation of the data. And so when you run a tactic of any sort, everything that we're doing in marketing today, we've got lots of numbers to look at, right? We've got lots of data, but we want to be really honest in our evaluation and say, okay, if we're running a series of tactics and events, how do they perform? What's working? What does the data tell us? How do we refine based on what is working and not working, and allow that to kind of guide us, so that if we're automating something and we've got a really high unsubscribe rate to an email that we think is a great personalized email, it tells us no, the prospects don't find that content very useful. Or if we're making a lot of social posts that nobody's interacting with, then maybe our social posts aren't of value. So it's sort of looking at that, and really making sure you've got a well built out plan that allows you to kind of have sort of your efforts and activities, but to kind of continue to adjust and modify based on what's working and what's not within that segment, within that plan, versus, hey, we're going to just hit this segment once, and then we're going to go over there and hit this segment, and we're going to do one activity here, and they're not sort of connected into a longer term coherent plan.
Absolutely.
So with that, we'll wrap up here today. Certainly, if you have questions on planning, or Jeffrey and I are happy to help with an evaluation of your plan. Be happy to talk about your efforts. You can reach out to us with our emails right here or via our website. Certainly, you can connect with us on LinkedIn or social media. And we hope your 2021 planning efforts get off to a great start, and that you guys have a successful 2021. Thanks.
Bye.